everyone, the viewing audience, get ready for fear. Stop thinking for yourselves. Stop having the audacity of thinking that your vote is yours, because actually it belongs to somebody else. Okay. And as we have progressed forward, as we have covered this election cycle, because let's face it, 2024 is just months away. We still got December. But already corporate media is doing what I knew they would do, and that is wrap up the fear tactics to causing people to lose their ability to think critically for themselves. And who else to lead us into this world of fear than Simone Sanders herself? Good old Simone Sanders, who did so many mental gymnastics, both mentally and physically in 2020 to protect Joe Biden. Never forget, this is the same Simone Sanders who was just Bernie Sanders. And don't worry, Bernie Sanders never got compromised. But already, folks, they're already saying, and this is her own quote, in 2024, if neither candidate gets 270 electoral college votes, our antiquated system, did you know that the House decides who the president is by majority delegation? And guess who's in majority of the House? The Republicans. Well, big whoop. Now, I think all of us have been very critical about the independent and third-party candidates and how they could have done more, or maybe have not been as lackluster. But nonetheless, it would be a sight to see if one of these candidates were to potentially pull off the unthinkable, that is, maybe secure 1 or 2 electoral college votes. Now, that's a very big, high probability. The establishment won't let that happen, but if that scenario were to happen, it would be unheard of. And I think the only boon for us as people who are post-duopoly, people who are, I think at this point, burnt out by electoral politics, is that it could energize people to get more actively involved in politics and maybe go for supporting citizen ballot initiatives. That's the one boon. So let's get ready to laugh and enjoy the fear, as Simone Sanders tells us that we have to be afraid, not think for ourselves. So here she is. She's going to tell us that. Hold on. Here's Simone Sanders. Don't think for yourself. Just shut up and follow orders.
We are 50 days away from the Iowa caucuses and more than 340 days away from the 2024 presidential election. As we get closer to Election Day, there is growing attention on how third-party candidates could impact the race. So let's take a trip down memory lane to 2016. During that election year, third-party candidates collectively won around 4% of the vote in Pennsylvania.
Oh, what a night.
4% of the vote in Michigan.
Wasn't that beautiful?
Combined, this accounted for more than
Kit was eating
100,000 votes.
Which New York strip.
Oh,
you know
what? You know what? Not only was I eating
cocktail.
Not only was I eating it up that night, I mean, I was probably the only person in my social group that wasn't having a mental breakdown like, oh no, Trump is winning. Who cares? I'm actually impressed with these numbers. But here's the thing. Jill Stein gets vilified, but I wish people would acknowledge that, hey, Gary Johnson of the Libertarians took actually more away from Trump. I mean, he was far more successful and at least gaining more votes than Jill Stein did in 2016. Jill Stein becomes the villain because, she's more Democrat adjacent, I guess. But looking at these numbers, this is fantastic to see what the Greens and Libertarians were able to pull off. And I wish that they actually kept their act together after 2016, because maybe they would have had much more of an infrastructure. But this is something I want to see, and more so during the 2024 election cycle, so that we could see maybe a rise in more support. And already, look, we made it abundantly clear. I made it abundantly clear how I feel about RFK Jr.'s independent run and Dr. Cornel West's run and the Green Party and the Libertarians. I mean, they could have done so much more and maybe not been so cringeworthy and I guess shooting from the hip. But nonetheless, it is what it is. But this vilification of what happened in 2016 is the media's attempt to make people feel bad about what they did and how they used their vote. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. You remember that day? Sorry, I don't mean to step on the segment, but this is worth a quick diversion. True story. So in 2016, my brother was in college as the votes were being counted. And he was sitting in this auditorium, all like a few hundred college, libs were packed into an auditorium watching the results come in, and it was obvious Trump was going to win. and the room was just absolutely stunned, silent. People were absolutely traumatized. They couldn't move. They couldn't talk. They were just shell shocked. There was this one MAGA kid at the school. Like, he's the only one, because all these colleges are like 90% Democrat, right? No, so there's this one MAGA kid who gets up. He leaves the room for about an hour. He comes back. The room is still stunned, silent. Nobody has saying this. You could hear a pin drop in this fucking room. He comes back with a bottle of champagne and pops the cork in the middle of the room, and it echoed throughout the room.
It was like, ah!
It was like fireworks going off when the cork, boom, and just started chugging the champagne in a room full of like hundreds of shell-shocked kids. Yeah,
you know what would have been a great send off for that. It's like that scene from Day of the Dead of when the army captain gets ripped apart by the zombies. Imagine him being ripped apart by the liberals. Like, choke on it, liberals, choke on it. Let's continue on because it gets better. It gets better. Simone Sanders goes off on the deep end. Was this one?
Which was enough to sway the presidential race and hand Donald Trump an electoral college victory. So just imagine the impact that third-party votes could have in next year's race. Let's face it, folks. There are Americans out there who don't want to vote for Republicans and they don't want to vote for Democrats. And it does show in the data. Gallup actually found that 63% of American adults currently agree with the statement that the Republican and Democratic parties do, quote unquote, such a poor job of representing the American people that a third major party is needed.
I would go further, like maybe a fourth, fifth, or sixth. But to quote Jesse Ventura, when he talks about third parties, because we got to be clear here, because we have to give a proper analysis and use these as references. He said it best. If there was a third party or fourth party, instead of a two-headed monster, we have a four-headed monster. So we have to look at the other initiative, and that is calling for citizen ballot initiatives to abolish all political parties. Right. And while the founding fathers had their faults, Washington and a lot of the more diehard, founding fathers who believed in not having political parties were absolutely correct, because when you have a political party, the party is always going to put its interests before the nation and the people. And when you have independence, you have more diversity, you have more people, more the governance of the nation, and the continuation and protection of the people. That's the whole point of it. Now, I do like seeing these numbers. It's talking about adults, but let's also add in young people. Young people have seen firsthand how the Democratic Party and the Republican Party has screwed over their communities and their families for generations now. Gen Z and the next generation following afterwards. No one's going to be a diehard loyalist. The only reason why the Democrats and Republicans have any relevancy whatsoever is because they have enough sycophants and people who are brainwashed into believing that their vote matters to the two-party system. Now, this crop of independents and third-party candidates, I got to be real with you, I think they may not follow through with what I want them to do. There is potential, but I think that we could be seeing that initial push for real involvement by people to finally break the system that we have at hand. And again, it's what we're going to see here more so from Simone is, don't be afraid because Republicans and Trump. I'm not afraid of a Trump presidency, and no one should be afraid of a Trump presidency. I'm not expecting anything to change drastically under Trump. What we saw under Trump is what we're going to get for probably another 4 years. But it's not my fault. It's not Keaton's fault. It's not the viewing audience's fault. It's not CJ's fault that the Democrats never followed through with their promises. Because if they did, they wouldn't be in this situation. So in other words, why would anyone with a rational mind waste their vote for the Democrats when the Democrats will constantly lie? Let me just play a little more of this.
Let me state one part here. So before you play, so she's basically identifying a problem, Keaton and Kit. She's saying, in this democratic society, you guys are saying you don't want this. So obviously they're gonna go, well, since the people don't want it, let's do something different, right, Kit? That's what she's gonna say, right?
Yeah, okay. and so hold on. She's gonna go further because it's sort of like, oh no, Donald Trump, the orange boogeyman, woogie boogie boogie.
Look, I do not doubt Gallup's data, and I don't doubt the people's preferences. But the chance of a third-party candidate actually winning the presidency in real life, it remains highly unlikely. So is a third-party candidate really a threat to Joe Biden or even the Republican frontrunner Donald Trump? Well, I spoke to the senior communications director of Third Way, Kate DeGruyter, earlier this week. And I just got to play for y'all what she had to say about a strategy that the No Labels movement could use in order for Donald Trump to win in what she calls a chaotic and dangerous way. Take a listen.
What we think their new plan is to try and win a handful of states in order to force a contingent election, basically to deny either Biden or Trump a path to 270 votes. If that happens, that is likely to trigger the 12th Amendment that would throw the vote of the 2024 election to the House of Representatives. In that crazy scenario, what would happen is the House would vote by delegation. Right now, Republicans control 26 delegations. So a House vote would mean Donald Trump would win in the most chaotic and dangerous way possible.
Let me reiterate for you. If neither Donald Trump, if he's a Republican nominee, nor President Joe Biden get to 270 electoral college votes, then the Republican Congress, under the leadership of Speaker Mike Johnson, a chief cheerleader of what unfolded in the lead up to and on January 6th, they will decide who the next president will be. And if that happens, let's just be very clear. They're going to choose Donald Trump. Please tell me again how your vote doesn't matter.
Okay, yes. All right, Simone. We're going to pause you there. So let me just break this down simply, okay? Democrats, liberals, latte drinking liberals, the vote blue no matter who brunch. And yes, even diehard Republican red voters. You know, both parties had numerous opportunities to get rid of the Electoral College, an antiquated system that has its origins based in slavery, for the slave states to exist and for the free states to exist. We are the only superpower that claims to be a democracy that has this antiquated system. Normal democracies, normal republics have a thing called popular vote, which, surprise, surprise, the person who wins the most votes becomes the winner. And we don't have the Electoral College. They don't have that. We do. So in other words, it is not my fault that the establishment system created this nightmare. And so if independents, let's say RFK Jr., Dr. Cornel West, Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party, and whoever the Libertarian nominee is going to be, let's say each of them were to win an Electoral College vote, however impossible that might be, that would upend the system. But it's not their fault should they win those Electoral College votes, because guess what? A person who's going to vote for any of those candidates, or be it Biden or Trump, that vote goes to that person. If you're going to vote Republican, you're voting Republican. If you vote Democrat, you're voting Democrat. Voting independent, you're voting independent, third party, etc. Your vote is going to that said person because they earned your vote. That's politics 101. And the media, realizing that Joe Biden is going down the toilet and Kamala is plummeting even further faster because Trump is systematically leading Biden in the polls right now. Now, anything can happen between now and election night in 2024. But as it stands right now, Biden is losing at all fronts. He has lost the black vote. He has lost the Arab vote. He has lost the Muslim vote. He's lost the LGBTQ vote. He's losing young people. Biden and the Democrats did this to themselves. So all those groups that I mentioned and other groups as well, they're looking for alternatives. And people want something fundamentally different than what we've been getting these past decades. The Democrats aren't delivering. The Republicans aren't delivering. Corporate media sees that Joe Biden is failing. The Democrats are not going to take the initiative and get rid of Joe Biden as a nominee. So they're stuck with that old dog. So in other words, because of Biden's inability to be a leader, and because clearly he's showing dementia and Alzheimer's, a voter with a rational mind will want to secure their vote with somebody that represents their values. Now, ballot access is going to be a whole other story altogether. But should the independents and third parties pull this off, then it is a voter's right to use their vote how they want. You can't spoil something that's already spoiled. All right. And these other candidates are not stealing independent and third party votes. They are earning that vote. And none of us should be shamed or bullied into how we're going to use our vote. Hell, it's completely rational for voters to not vote at all because, let's face it, electoral politics is burning out a lot of us. This election cycle might be the last election cycle I'm going to vote in because I am just done with it. I am done with whatever the politicians are going to be throwing out there. And I expected a lot more from the third party and independent movement. And I think we have to look at maybe this being the last big hurrah and finally focusing on state issues and state citizen ballot initiatives so that all 50 states can decide their own destiny and not wait on Washington, D.C. to never deliver like they've always have. So that's all in this video here. Simone Sanders bullying you and telling you to be afraid and not think for yourself. So that's what we're getting from her. Be afraid, don't think, and look out. It's Joe Manchin. Look out. It's RFK Jr. Look out. It's Cornel West. Look out. It's Jill Stein. Look out. It's libertarians. Because if any of those people get in power, it's going to help Trump. Or if you put your vote to those people, you're going to help Trump, which is propaganda and a lie. And no, I'm not going to waste my time for it. So, gentlemen, any kind of words?
Yes. So vote shaming is here. Vote shaming arrived early. It seemed like vote shaming for 2024. It seemed like it arrived early this time around, and they've been kind of soft vote shaming. When Cornel West first kind of got in it, they were kind of soft vote shaming, but you can clearly see that the intensity, as his poll numbers go down, the intensity goes up in the vote shaming, and it is very fervent on cable news, as you can see there with the Simone segment. But that's my take, guys.
Yeah. I don't know, Keaton. Final word. Give us the gut check to.
I mean, it's just incredible watching that, thinking who is watching this and taking this seriously, like who. You know, first of all, I don't even understand the stakes. Like the fear mongering about Trump as the world literally crumbles under Joe Biden. Like, I don't understand how they even hold that together. Like, how is that even something that appeals to an audience? It's amazing. It's really, really astounding to think that there are people who absorb that and actually feel threatened by the idea of, you know, no labels running a candidate that peels off a state or two, which means there's no electoral college majority winner. First of all, a lot has to go right for the no labels party for that to even happen, right? Because not only would they had to win a state or two, right, which is very, very hard. I mean, that would be extremely difficult for a third party to actually win a state. It depends on who they run, but it's extremely difficult. And then they have to assume that those states are going to be enough, whatever their electoral vote total is in the one or two states that they win, that's going to be enough to pull either Trump or Biden under 270 votes. One other thing they should keep in mind, as of the last crop of polling, Trump is beating Biden in like 5 out of 6 of the pivotal swing states. So even if no labels picks off a state or two, it's probably not going to be enough to pull Trump under 270 if the election were held right now. So the whole thing is just this fantastical exercise in, like you said, fear-mongering.
Let me pull up this comment here because it speaks to what you just said, and I don't know, how much of this is true, but let's bring it up. It's directly related. It's from Janice, and everybody knows Janice. She donates to all of us. What's up, Janice? Thank you for the super chat.
Shout out to Janice.
She says she's lying, and she's referring to Simone Sanders. She says, per Constitution, all candidates needs is the most votes, not the majority. The only way it goes to Congress is if it's a tie, if the two leading candidates are in a tie.
Yeah, I saw you posted that, and I did look it up because I thought you needed a majority of the Electoral College. What I just read said that you needed a majority. So you need a majority of those available. And so that's
the majority of available. So if the number has fallen, it's still whatever the majority electoral college vote. So
so it says here, the person having the greatest number of votes shall be the president if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. In other words, it needs to be a majority, not the plurality, which in this case would mean 270. Now, the reason they say it goes to the House in a 269 tie is because in a two-party system where it is assumed that either a Democrat or a Republican will win every state, the only way in which no one gets a majority is under a tie. But what they're saying is that if, say, no labels picks off a state or two, then you can win a plurality of electoral college votes without crossing the 270 threshold.
Right.
So there's my source right there. I just looked that up because
There you go. You did your own research. How dare you, Keaton?
I'll be really sneaky. See, here's my source
dare
right there.
you.
Everybody can see that very
Yeah.
clearly, right? Okay.
Using the interwebs to get sources and stuff. All right, gentlemen. Unless you got something else,
Well,
I
because
got
that's the
RFA
kind of
source.
thing
Go
that
ahead.
never comes up because it's a two-party system, so it never comes up, right? Because whenever you assume that it's going to be whenever you assume it's going to go to the House, it's because it's a 269 tie. With only two candidates, that's the only way that's possible. But with three, it's possible for one candidate to have the lead, but not the majority.